If you want to build a great team, right, then you will have to know your team members beyond the work.
As much as time you give building relationship with your product, you have to invest in similar amount of time building relationship with your stakeholders. So one tip that she gave me was, do not have lunch with the same person every day.
What advice would you give to yourself as a maybe 20-year-old Malthi?
Be positive and be more kind to yourself. I think that is what I would tell my younger self. So you should be willing to unlearn, saying that not everything applies everywhere. Right? So there could be always new ways of doing things.
I mean, I love that. I think it resonated what you said. You have been criticizing yourself for a very long time and you know that it hasn't worked out. Just try appreciating yourself and see how life unfolds. Hi guys, I'm Gautam Patil and welcome to Startup Tales, where we bring inspiring stories from the world of entrepreneurship. Today we have a very special guest with us, Malthi ma'am, who is a product leadership coach, and she has worked with top brands like PayPal, Intuit. She has worked with a lot of startup founders and helped them in building products, analyzing their products. This episode is really going to add great value to those guys who are aspiring product managers or who are already product managers and want to transition to become one of the best product managers or want to excel in the product management journey. I think this episode will add great value to all of you guys. So I'm sure that you guys will love this episode, and please don't forget to show love to this episode. And if you have not subscribed to Startup Tales, then please do subscribe to Startup Tales. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I welcome you to Startup Tales, and looking forward to have a really good conversation with you.
My pleasure.
So, because you have been there in the industry, the product management industry for 22 plus years, right? I would love to know how have you evolved over all these years, and what's your journey looks like?
Okay. So reflecting back, I started my journey back in the year 2000, and like many of us IT professionals, I started as a developer, a BAP developer, which is an SAP proprietary language. And for the next 8-9 years, I kind of just grew up the ranks. In the interim, I joined SAP Labs India. And then as I was kind of growing in my career, the question was, okay, next what? Right? And that is when I happened to interview for a role internally within SAP for a product manager role. And I really have to say that I was an accidental product manager, right?
Oh.
Yeah. And in fact, in those days, back in 2009 and all, a lot of people would confuse project manager for a product manager. And I think I also kind of signed up something like that, right? So that's how my product management career began. And being in the SAP world, I spent a lot of time in building B2B large enterprise products, right? So my first product, which was called as Test Data Migration Server, worked on that for about 3.5 years, kind of grew up the customer base, built a new bunch of vertical solutions. And from there, moved on to join EMC, where I worked on a content management platform. That was again a very B2B product. And then I moved on to join Intuit, where I was heading the QuickBooks payroll product. And I think this was my first brush with, moving from a few thousand customers to suddenly you are talking about 10 million daily active users, right? So for me, it was kind of a little overwhelming also that, oh my God, how am I going to build products that is liked by millions of these customers? How do I listen to these customers? How do I know that what to build, what not to build, right? So I think that was a huge, steep learning curve for me, moving from a large enterprise to a more SMB space or to an end user. But I think some of my craft of product management is which I learned over there, especially expanding further on, building up further on design thinking, building up customer empathy. I was handling a product which was 20 plus years old, had a very huge customer retention. So how do I continue to innovate while making sure that I'm not messing up with existing customer base? So I think those were some brilliant challenges, but I really have to say that I learned a lot from my peers, from the organization, and from my customers. And so I worked there for about 4 years and led 2 big products over there, responsible for a huge P&L. Then I moved on to join Society Generale as head of their KYC digital transformation. My role there was more like a evangelist, from a very traditional product companies. I was getting here into a organization which was kind of picking up big on the digital transformation, right? So what does product thinking mean for this organization? How do you build products which you can take to large enterprise customers back again, right? And then regulated, compliance, fintech, right? So those were some amazing learnings that I've had, and this was the first time I actually started working with startups, because I used to be part of a team there which used to be doing accelerator programs, and that is where I would say something in me changed, because I saw the pace at which startups work. They are able to push out products versus we at large enterprise customers, we were much slower, right? And of course there are good reasons for us to have those processes in place. But I think that's what kind of also got me into this FOMO of, am I missing out by not working with startups? And I'll come back to this point later. And from Society Generale, I went on to join PayPal, where I used to head as a director of products, I used to head the payments platform. So whether your payment is coming through an app, it is coming through a website or any of the other channels for PayPal, our platform would basically process all that globally. For all millions of transactions that would happen through that. So then in beginning of 2022 is when, and during this time, I also started to volunteer a lot with NASSCOM as part of their, they have a deep tech club startup. So I started to mentor a lot of startups there over weekends. I started to help building product skills. So that's when I started mentoring a lot of aspirant PMs and practicing PMs. So that finally led me to take this leap of faith and say that, okay, why don't I try to do this full time? Cool. Okay, so back in 2020 is when I started my solopreneurship journey. And since then it has been a amazing, I would say probably roller coaster is a good word. I've been working with a bunch of startups to help them with their product strategy, GTM strategy, what to build, what not to build. I've been associated with this startup called as Herkey, which was earlier called as Jobs for Her. And we are in this hyper growth phase, just released our new product, built their entire product team along with the tech. And apart from that, been spending some good amount of time teaching. So I'm a visiting faculty at a couple of B schools like IIM Udaipur and Masters Union, where I teach product strategy, execution, PM 101. And it is very, very enriching. I think I kind of found my passion for teaching a few years back, and I'm kind of enjoying it thoroughly now. And beyond that, I also do, product leadership coaching, training product managers at large enterprise organizations, helping set up their operating model. And once I've done all of these things, I might try to find a little bit of time to write my newsletter, which I started in Substack a few months back, and also do my own podcast, which is called as Product Talk with Malthi.
Super cool. I mean, there was so much in this. So, I mean, that completely resonates with that 22 years of experience now. So because you have seen both the sides, the startup, worked on products at startups, worked on products at big MNCs, you have worked on products which are having less traffic, you have worked on products which are having millions of traffic, and seeing a lot of things in this throughout the phase of 22 years, right? So what I want to basically tell you is that let's try to do one thing. Let's try to take this podcast in such a way that because your introduction was super amazing, let's try to take it in such a way that how do you become, there are a lot of product managers out there doing pretty good job. How can we basically help them to become a great product manager, moving that journey from good to great? What all strategies, what all challenges you have faced, and how you have taken that move in your own personal journey and all. So let's try to dig more into depths of that. I'll try my best to, extract as much as I can from your experiences and whatever you have faced, whatever your learnings you have gone through and all.
Sure, happy to share.
Thank you so much. So let's start with a very fundamental thing. Let's say what are some of the core fundamental skills which you feel that a product manager must have, and without that I think it's not going to work out for them.
So I think, see, in every profession, you have certain hard skills and then there are soft skills, right? And this becomes even more critical for a product manager because you are like an orchestrator or like a bridge who's kind of, working with a lot of different people, right? So I'll try to break this into those two parts. So if you ask me some very foundational skills for a product managers is that there has to be an attitude of problem solving.
Okay.
Right? So you are seeing a problem and you have an urge, you have the curiosity to understand that problem better so that you can come up with solutions. Having said that, one of the challenges that we also have is that we jump to conclusions of solutions very fast.
Very true.
Right? So stay in that problem statement because that helps you to understand your customers better. So as I said, first is curiosity to understand. Second would be problem solving and attitude to problem solving. Third is giving yourself the time to build your customer empathy, right? That is very important. The other part, since if you talk about tech products and all my experience comes from building tech products, you need to have a flair for technology. You may not be an engineer, which is absolutely, I've had some fantastic non-engineers in my team, and I'm myself a non-engineer. I mean, I kind of did not come from an engineering background, right? So a flair for technology is very important because that becomes your foundation to interact with your engineering team, right? So these are some very important hard skills that you need to have. Beyond that, communication, for example. You are somebody who is constantly trying to negotiate with your engineers on, let's say, story points. You are somebody who's trying to build that narrative to your investors or to your leadership of putting together the business case of why we should do it, right? So storytelling, whether it is verbal communication, whether it is written communication, very, very important. You are trying to influence somebody to buy in the point that you are making. So influencing without authority, right? So if you ask me, and I think the most important beyond all these things, nobody comes in the morning and tells a product manager, this is what you have to do.
I agree.
Right? So you need to have a very, very high sense of ownership and you should be very self-motivated. Right? So according to me, especially that is why when I speak to a product manager, typically I try to dig into these various aspects in terms of their foundational skills.
Super cool, super cool. And does having a long-term vision about the product and understanding what my customer would want and what they don't want, does that also plays a role? I mean, having a
absolutely, absolutely. But see, you need to be able to understand, right? For example, when we talk about somebody who's starting their product management journey, while it is very important for you to understand the big picture, but probably as you start with something small.
Got it.
Right? Because see, the charm of doing product management is that you should be able to get into the details because that's where the devil lies. Right? And at the same time, you should be able to abstract yourself to look at that big picture. Right? So I would say this whole strategic thinking, to be able to visualize, to be that future teller by absorbing things from across, outside in, is a very, very important skill. But that comes along as you build your craft in your career, right? So you need to definitely watch out for that. But for somebody who's just aspiring, I don't want to kind of, overwhelm with them saying that, are you thinking strategically? Because that's a craft that you build.
Got it.
Right?
And that's going to take time.
Yes, it will. So make sure that your foundations are in place. That means you are able to really understand that why your customer is saying, why are they coming from, how do they solve the problem today, right? And then you start slowly build off with that. And then of course you need to understand the big picture, saying that what influences a customer's decision of doing a certain thing. Will the customer pay for it? Right? What is my competition doing? That all part of influences your vision, your product strategy, strategic thinking and everything. So absolutely you are right. Big picture, connecting the dots to the most trivial details of what should be the button look like or what should be the font look like. A product manager has to, own up all.
Yeah. Super cool, super cool. So one more follow-up question is that in your journey, right, there would be, even you had started your journey at some point in time, right, where you any skills are not, I mean, God gifted, right?
Correct.
So you have learned everything, right? So what are, there would be a lot of moments in your journey also, or a lot of incidents that could have happened that have shaped your career and helped you to transition from becoming, from excelling in your career and all. So can you just share me some of those moments which you must have had experiences with lots of brands which you worked with, lot of companies which you worked with, right?
Sure. Absolutely. And I think, that is also a very underlying trait of a product manager, right? Which is continuous learning, because every product, every domain you build a product for, every different customer segment, there is always tons of new things that you will have to upskill yourself, right? And I think that's what keeps it very interesting and challenging, that you are not monotonously doing the same thing. Every new day comes with a new set of challenges, right? So that's what kept me very, very interested. Now, if you ask me, yes, for example, I can give you a lot of examples, right? When I said that when I was building these B2B products, right? Imagine you are having one customer who's probably giving you a revenue in millions, right? Versus you are talking about these millions of users where each user is probably giving you an average revenue of $50.
Okay.
Right? Now, obviously, the way you deal with your high value customers versus you have to deal with millions of low value denomination customers, you have to deal with both these customers very differently. Right? So, for example, when I moved from a large enterprise B2B space to a product which is more B2C, it required a different kind of muscle for me to understand that how do I say whether I need to build this or not build this. So your lens of prioritization, right, is very different. For example, here, imagine if I'm building something for, I don't want to name the customers, but I'll just talk about, if you're talking about an apparel and footwear solution, there are just handful of global players over there. And if majority of these global players are your customers, they become an industry, right? So you got to build what they say. Either you build it as a custom solution, or you decide that no, because 3 of them are saying, so this will eventually become a norm and all other AFS customers will ask for it. That might also be a true.
Got it.
Right? So while I'm building there for a customer, I'm also hypothesizing that this will become the market. Versus here, I cannot choose to build for a customer who's paying me $50 for a tax product. I have to further do cohorts, I had to segment it. So, right, so for me, that was a big change. The second thing I would say, the way I empathize for my customers, right? For example, here I would run a product advisory council, which has some of my most valued customers who keep coming back and using. Versus here, every new small and medium business that I'm visiting is in a different, somebody is in education, somebody is in catering, right? So my insights are very, very diverse, right? So how do you build your data acumen over there? So I never did any product instrumentation in majority of my B2B products. And I'm talking this also 15 years back. At that point of time, data analysis was more about qualitative, talking to customers and then looking to your customer support and driving decisions from that. We were really not doing any hardcore product instrumentation to look at how my customer is using the product. But when I came to 2014, 2015 and I moved into this B2C product, we realized that because we did not do product instrumentation in our legacy products, there was only this much that we knew about our customers, what they tell us. So then the next thing was that, how do I bring in product instrumentation into this legacy product? Because I really want to know what is working for the customer, what is not working for the customer.
Got it, makes sense.
Right? So I would say some of these aha moments which I had in my career were to become more data driven by looking at how the customer is using the product, right? Learning a lot about data, learning a lot about how to do, let's say, frameworks like conjoint analysis, cohort analysis, understanding user journey, right? And then I would say how to do user research, right? When you are doing a user research for a customer who's giving you $50 million as a revenue versus when you're doing it with somebody who's giving you probably $100 as revenue, your user research has to be very, very different.
Makes sense, makes sense.
Right? So yeah, I mean, and then of course, when you are decision making, for example, when you are working in an organization which has large customers versus when you are so resource constraints. For example, in the last few years, I've been working with startups which are so super resource constrained. So how do you become very fluid? How do you become very flexible so that with less, how you can do more? Iterate much more. Your decisions are made much more faster. Like there, I need to get a consensus from head of marketing, head of customer support, head of sales, versus here, I only talk to the founder.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Right? And we are able to ship something in like less than a week. So, I mean, even in the last 2 years, if you ask me, tremendous amount of learning. I don't think I have learned so much about, for example, marketing, right? I mean, while I have worked a lot on the B2C product, but a lot of SaaS, these things and all that I shipped up. So it has been every product, as I said, like a lot of people approach me and ask me, should I become a specialist or should I, should I go into a specific domain? Should I specialize in a e-commerce product or should I remain a generalist? Now you need to understand there are pros and cons in both. I have remained a generalist, though fintech happened that one after the other, the opportunities came in. But believe me, for example, payment is a very, very domain intense space, right? I mean, there have been people who have spent years together just understanding how a credit card, we can optimize a credit card payment, right? So for me, it was a steep learning curve. But I think given that I had a very complementary set of very core product management skills which I brought into place, it was easy for me. I mean, then I could just focus on the domain and there were different hacks that I played so that, I'm able to extract the domain expertise from my peers, from my stakeholders, while I was able to put what I brought to the table, which was my product management skills.
So, working in MNC versus working in startup, where you have enjoyed the most?
I would say both of them have their own charm, right? Because when you are working in an MNC, especially the nature of products that I have dealt with, we have been solving problem at scale, right? I mean, while I know, sometimes even making a small change and to be able to ship it to our customers have taken a long time because, the decisions have to be made across a lot of stakeholders. We have to think about things holistically so that it doesn't impact our customer, what could be the impact on our revenue. So while it takes a slow times and sometimes it can also be a little frustrating, but I think it gives you a flavor of what it takes to operate at that scale, right? And I think, and that is where a lot of organizations, right, if you look at big companies, they try to have a balance where the existing product, which is the business as usual, how do they put up the processes in place so that they are able to eliminate any bottlenecks of decision making, having top priorities so that multiple teams can come together, versus they are also having this whole startup hustle where they are able to move fast, build new products, build MVPs. So there has to be a good balance, right? So for me, as I said earlier, right, when I came to these startups, I was really amazed at the speed at which they make decisions, they are able to ship it out. But I think coming from a bigger organization, I was able to appreciate what it takes to build at scale, because building from, I would say, 1 to 10 is not same as 10 to 100.
Agreed.
Or 100 to 10,000. Right? So you need to have that balance, because the nature of impact when you are building a 0 to 1 product is very, very contained, versus when you are doing it at 1,000 or at 10,000 or 1,000,000. So it is different. So I have admired, but I think what helps is that as you mature, as you scale, if you put processes, decision making, if you kind of put the kind of right roles and responsibilities, and communicate it very well, and make sure that the organization structured is in a way that it helps in faster decision making, eliminates bottlenecks, doesn't bring in bureaucracy, for example, then you are still able to move fast and continue to be an organization which is very innovative.
Makes sense. Also, the fact that the big MNCs might take a long time than startups to implement, let's say, the same kind of feature. Correct. Maybe because of the reputation also that comes into of those companies, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if it is not tested properly, if it goes very fast. Recently, what incident happened, let's say, with Microsoft CloudStrike. Correct. And all, right? So
Correct.
That reputation also might come into picture.
Absolutely. Brand impact is something, and that's what I was saying, because it goes through, your marketing, your customer support, your sales, your partners sometimes, is that because you want to make sure you have vetted out every important stakeholder, everywhere there could be an impact because of the change that you're trying to make or what you're trying to build, right? And yeah, I mean, this could have impact on your, not only your brand, your stock prices, everything,
true, very
right?
true.
So it could have a direct top line impact. So yeah, absolutely.
So, because we were talking about moving from good to great, so I think personally feel that, correct me if I'm wrong, leadership, decision making, interpersonal skills are going to play a very important role as you start advancing in your career path, right? So let's little bit get into depths of this.
Sure.
Let's start understanding your mindset of building teams and all.
Sure.
So one question is that which I personally have seen at lot many places is that the people who are really smart in this world are actually the ones where it is very difficult to make smart people work together. Because with extra smart talent or extra smart skills comes little bit of ego or arrogance somehow, and because of which it's very difficult to make smart people sit in one room and do and take work from them.
Yeah.
So if you are a team leader, right, how would you approach in this case?
Sure. So I think, I don't remember who said that. You don't hire smart people to tell them what to do, but you ask them, tell us what we should do.
Okay.
Right? I think, if I'm not wrong, I think it was Steve Jobs. Right? So I would say it is very, very important to, first of all, have a team which is not very homogeneous. Right? Because I think the greatness or the good results come out when you have a very diverse set of people who come with different type of thinking, and that sometimes leads to some really innovative products, right? That's number one. So I try to make sure that when I'm hiring people or when I'm bringing in people, they come from diverse backgrounds, which is should be apt for what we are trying to do, right? So that's very important. The second thing is that absolutely that also comes with sometimes traits. So when I am usually hiring people or when I'm managing my teams, I think one of the most important thing that I look for is that people should be their attitude, right? Because attitude makes or breaks things.
Very true.
Right? So that's very important. So people have to be grounded, people have to be humble. There has to be respect, right? And it is not only about peer respect. Even as a leader, I do not know everything. I got you on board to the team so that you tell me what we can do better, let's say, as a product analyst.
Correct.
Right? You equip me to take that decision. I hire a designer who is got a sharp eyes for design because I'm not a designer. Right? So mutual respect, whether it is between your peers, with your leaders, I think that is non-negotiable. Right? So I think some of the things which I try to do when I'm handling a smart set of people, and I've been blessed in most of my organizations I have to do, I think is that you need to first of all build the whole aspect of trust culture. Right? That's number one. Number two, you have to create an atmosphere where people feel it is okay to speak up, even an idea which they think may not be that great, because no idea is a silly idea.
Correct. So people are not judged for what
people are not judged. Exactly, right? So you need to bring in that aspect, saying that it is okay to make mistakes as long as you don't repeat them.
Correct. Very
right?
true.
You learn from them, you move on, and you kind of learn to make better decisions, right? So I think truest form of empowerment leads to building trust, right? And the other idea is that people should not feel ashamed of asking for help. It is okay. Nobody in this world knows everything.
Yeah.
Right? So I think keeping that human side of things at the core of it, whether it is your team, whether it is your products, whether it is your customers, I think from my perspective is very, very important. Right? So treating everybody with respect, making sure that you are empowering your team, not building that trust. So for example, I personally do not like to micromanage, right? And that is why the first thing for your first question, I said that I really look for people who come with a very, very high degree of ownership. So that I don't have to tell you that, hey, and I don't have to follow up with you like 10 times.
Correct.
I don't want to do that. Right? So I think these would be some of the things that I have practiced with my teams, and thankfully, even whether it was my time 10 years back at SAP, I still have a huge rapport. I continue to spend time and meet up my team members, my colleagues. And I think that is because of some of these things. And of course, I have also in this journey learned a few things that I should do, I should not do. But yeah, I think that's where I feel
that completely makes sense.
Innovation happens.
So also, I think a lot of amazing points which you mentioned. One of the point is even the sense of appreciation to your team as a leader. If you
Correct.
appreciate everyone's opinion, whatever ideas they are coming up, right or wrong, and conveying to them in right way that these are the other ways also we can have a thought over and all. I think that really not only helps maybe in building a good team, but also they'll stick to you for a longer duration of time. They'll be committed towards your vision and all for a longer duration of time, I guess.
Correct. So feedback is definitely very core to it, right? Whether it is good feedback or not so good feedback, but again, keeping that human element in these things, and as you said, celebrate small successes, right? Respect is something which is very integral, right? You cannot hamper. I mean, you cannot impact that, right? So
and everyone wants to be felt worthy, respected.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly, right? So I think as long as you are sensitive to those things, I think the teams will thrive.
So the core human skills will play a very important role.
Huge.
Got it.
Because it's all, somebody in one of my previous organizations, she told me that, as a product manager especially, as much as time you give building relationship with your product, you have to invest in similar amount of time building relationship with your stakeholders. So one tip that she gave me was, do not have lunch with the same person every day.
Oh.
Try to have, because everybody needs to have coffee. Everybody needs to have lunch. Because, I'll give you some examples, right? Even, for example, some of the people who come to me and say that, Malthi, I want to have this difficult conversation with my team member or with my boss. How do I go about it? So I said, first of all, just get out of that meeting room. Go for a walk, right?
That makes sense.
Go to a nearby cafe and this, because suddenly that atmosphere becomes very light.
Agreed.
Right? And then it becomes more about the person. It is not, you are not attaching that title or that role, right? It is not very role centric. Then it is about that person. So I think the human element is very, very important.
I think I had read it somewhere, or I heard it from someone. If you want to build a great team, right, then you will have to know your team members beyond the work. Absolutely. And that happens outside office. When you meet, speak them, understand their likes, their dislikes, their hobbies, what interests them and all. That's how that bond gets created, right? That makes sense. So let's say if you have given an underperforming team, how would you approach this team then?
Okay. So first of all, I have to do a RCA, root cause analysis.
Okay.
Right? Look at the dynamics of the team. See, a lot of times it's not only about you, right? It is about how people are interacting with each other. You have to understand. That's exactly one thing which I say. As a product builder, you don't only have empathy with your customers, you need to have empathy with every single person in the room with whom you work. Right? So I think if I'm given an underperforming team, I think I want to do a root cause analysis of what has gone wrong, look for patterns, who are the people involved, what are the complementary, and I think probably I'll start with meeting up with each one of them one-on-one to understand their perspective, right? And based on that, probably look at, see, there are times that you need to take those hard decisions. Sometimes it is a fact, I have seen myself that one bad apple spoils the rest of the basket.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
There have been times when you take those hard decisions saying that this person is probably not a right fit for the team.
Exactly. He might be a right fit somewhere else, but not here.
Exactly. And that is why you will see a lot of companies these days spend time to figure out cultural fit for an incoming
this is a new round itself that has been introduced in hiring, right?
Because it's very important, right?
Correct.
I mean, you don't change job every month, 6 months or 1 year. Maybe today it is different, at least, right, because company is also investing, the individual is also investing in the time, right? So I would probably look at that, what in the team's composition is not working. Sometimes it could be just, there could be a skill gap, sometimes it could be an attitude, sometimes it could be just getting people to talk to each other.
Correct.
Believe me, just talking can get so many things sorted out.
Very true.
Right? So, what is the kind of trust level in the team? What is the kind of communication aspects? Sometimes it happens people have poor role definition. So, defining that you are responsible for that, you are responsible for that. So, I always believe that there are these three things that have to come together. Product. I mean, we have spoken about the product, but the process and people play a huge role. And as a leader, I think those would be some of the things that I would look at, that in terms of processes, what has worked, how has the decisions been made, what are the kind of data points that we ask for, so, and what are the team dynamics, how does the ecosystem react to a certain set of things, and then probably recommend changes. And especially, for example, if let's say I am the first person who's getting into the team, I don't want to say, okay, till yesterday you were working like this, from now onwards you will work like this. Because we are not robots.
Exactly.
It's not like a switch, Okay, now I'm going to start working like that. So it has to be gradual. It has to be taking people in confidence. So I always I will look for champions within the team who become, the ears and eyes for me, for the team, and work with this team to bring out that transformation. And I think the most important thing is that you also have to expect that this is not going to change in one day or 1 month. Sometimes it takes years to bring that cultural change. And in that time, there are hard decisions. You may have to bring in some new set of people. You may have to let go of people. You may have to think through some different ways of operating mechanisms of working. You may have to bring in some processes people may not like. But if it is bringing results, so again, I would as I build a product, I would continue to experiment. Is this works? Doesn't work? Let's try something else. That's how I would approach it.
Makes sense. I think lot many insights from whatever you answered for this question, at least. When it comes to, because we spoke about a lot of decision makings and all, right? So when it comes to decision making, right? How does an intuition play a role in, let's say, your decision making process? And versus, how do you compare it with the data-driven? How will you balance it out, the intuition versus the data-driven decisions which we take, right? So how do you, as a personal level, how do you balance these out?
See, it always has to be a balance. It has to be a composition of both, right? So I always say that data tells you a lot, right? So, and especially being a product manager, being fact-driven, being data-driven is very, very important. But I think this is where having spent time on the product, having spent time with your customers, gives you a story or a perspective which probably data doesn't show you very clearly. Right? So I always say that you should be data informed, right? Married to your own perspective that you have built over a period of time, because sometimes data helps you to remove those biases that you may have, right? So it has to be a combination. And that is where, let's say, when you are getting into a domain or a product where you are brand new, so that means you are probably starting with your intuition or perspective at a 0 level. So there, at those point of time, data probably takes a bigger proportion. But at that point of time, I would lean on my peers or subject matter experts to get a more secondary perspective or a proxy perspective.
Got it. Makes sense.
Right? I remember, I don't recall which product was it, but we made certain assumptions that when our small and medium businesses are going to pay invoices, they will always sort it based on the amount, right? That means if there is an invoice that they have to pay, they will always think the bigger the amount, I should keep it in priority and I should do that. But when we started doing some visits to our customers, we saw a majority of them go with due date. Right? So we are not our customers.
Agreed. That's a very good point.
Right? So all I'm trying to say is that give yourself that time, give yourself that liberty to soak it from your ecosystem, your stakeholders, even your proxies, your salespeople, your customer support people, who are your partners, who are close to your customers, because that only helps you to build your intuition. Of course, there are a lot of time you will have certain blind spots where you do not have enough data. You are taking a calculated risk over there. And that is where, as a product manager, risk planning is a very, very important aspect. Because only when you go and seek risks, you will build a mitigation plan. Right? There are known unknowns, there are unknown unknowns.
Correct.
I cannot prepare for everything. But unless if I go with a mindset, let me do a risk planning. What could be a value risk? What could be a usability risk? What could be a revenue risk?
Got it. That makes sense.
Right? So all I'm trying to say is that intuition is very important, but make sure it's a combination of both, data and intuition.
Got it. Makes sense. So we have spoke a lot of things about decision making, team building, leadership and all, right? So I want to understand more about you now, about the habits or the routines that you have inculcated in yourself, which has helped you in your career, to shape your career and all.
So I think a few things which I have probably inherited from my parents. I think one is reading habit, right? So even today, having that newspaper in the morning, spending half an hour to 45 minutes on that, because in fact a lot of my learning, I love the technology section or the world section, because I feel in the morning it's very fresh. So I think not only more newspaper, but beyond that I do have a reading habit. Of course, it has kind of changed from books a little bit to more short form, articles or maybe short form writing. So I would say books has been a major source of learning for me. That's number one.
You read, hardcover books, or
yes,
is it?
I'm a hardcover book. I'm not a Kindle person. Okay. I tried that. I need to hold it in my hand.
Okay.
Right. So
feel the paper.
Yes, absolutely. So I used to do like almost like 20-30 books a year earlier, but now it has come down to maybe like 10 books, 8 to 10 books in a year I try to do, and comes largely from folks around me. Moved from technology, pure play technology products book to more, I would say, leadership and, biographies, for example. Anyway, so, and of course, for example, a funny thing is that I find my kids get a lot of their news from Instagram these days.
Okay.
So I am also not untouched by social media.
Okay.
I do spend my time, whether it is TechCrunch or Money Control, or whether it is even LinkedIn, right? I get my bites of knowledge coming from there. Spend a little bit of time.
And this helps you to stay updated with the current trends that are going on, and helping you to implement all those things in the products which you are working, right?
Absolutely, right? So beyond that, especially since I've started teaching in the last couple of years, right? Harvard articles, I think, and they have been very, very, informative in terms of getting to know. Beyond that, I also take out time to, just talk to others, right? What they are doing. For example, my podcast is a great way for me to learn, right? What other leaders are doing, what other experts are doing. And I do try to take out time to, talk to others, and there is a lot of passive learning that happens, right? You are working with a bunch of startup founders, smart people. So there is a lot of passive learning that is also happening. And as I said earlier, I have to say that I do a lot of passive learning constantly, whether it is from my kids, whether it is from my students, whether it is folks like you, right? Because everybody has something that I don't know.
Correct.
Right? So I think there is this active and passive learning which is constantly happening. And beyond that, I am also a believer of, and I think every product manager believes in doing things, right? So for example, whether it could be building a small prototype. So I love to dirty my hands, So as I said, earlier I was telling you of the recording that I've learned Canva, I've learned how to build website with software, how to do certain, SLMs. So I also believe in dirtying my hands and constantly learning by myself.
I think you are not an engineer by profession, but you have that engineer mindset.
Yeah, I think, I would say it's more about an attitude to be curious.
That's very important.
Very important, and believing in continuous learning. And the third thing, I think the problem solving kida of a product manager just takes me all these places.
And the craze of building highly scalable, even understanding the fact that how much impact you are creating. The product that you build is used by so many people. I mean,
Correct.
That
Yeah, that's
big
right.
motivation for people who are working.
Thanks.
If it is one book you would want to suggest anyone to read that has changed your whole life.
One book which I, especially a lot of people who want to become product managers, which I definitely recommend is Inspired from Marty Kagan, right? Because I think it gives a very broad and a great perspective to understand that, what a product manager does and why he does. Similarly, in fact, there is another book he has written called as Transformed, which is more for product leaders, right? Because the kind of challenges you have as a product manager versus a product leader are slightly different.
Agreed.
Right? You need to step back and look at a lot more nuances around organization, people, processes and all that. So Transformed is another book which I really love. And if there has to be another book which I have to say, especially if we all are in this social media and stuff like that, would be Hooked by Nir Eyal, which is an amazing book that how do you create products which keeps getting your customer back to it all the time.
Cool. I think that will help the people who are entering into this field a lot, I guess.
Sure.
So also one more thing, a very important question which I want to ask, because you have been in this industry 22 years, right? So if you had to go back in time, and what advice would you give to yourself as a maybe 20-year-old Malthi starting this whole career once again, with whatever situations are right now, AI coming in and all the stuff happening, the product development, the field itself evolving in many different ways, right, over the period of last 20-30 years. So what is that one advice that you give to 20-year-old Malthi who is getting into?
Yeah, so I think there is one thing which I have learned over the years, which I would probably want to do differently, is that be more kind to yourself.
Okay.
Okay. So, for example, if something went wrong, or we probably, did not take the right decision, or, I would get very anxious. Maybe I only did this mistake. Maybe, I could have done this differently. Oh, why didn't I think about it? And, sometimes think what is the worst that could happen,
Exactly.
right? So, there was no need to get that kind of an anxiousness, right? I mean,
You exaggerate that.
right. So, I would say that, and I would really be very, very self-critical. I mean, not that I'm not that today, but maybe I'm a lot more kinder to myself. I allow myself to say that it is okay, you don't know everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably can do it better next time. So I think I would ask myself to be not so hard on myself, to be more kinder to myself, and maybe ask myself to ask for more help. Right?
Cool. I think I completely, this resonates with me, because recently I wrote a LinkedIn post where I was reading a book, and in that I came across this quote that you have been criticizing yourself for a very long time, and you know that it hasn't worked out. Just try appreciating yourself and see how life
Wonderful.
unfolds. I mean,
Wonderful.
I loved that. I think it resonated what you said.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And you have to give yourself, right? For example, if I take my journey, is a very long journey. Like in 24 years, if I have been doing things and have a decent career, have had a very fulfilling career, I would say, have worked with some amazing people, amazing organizations. So while I could have done something wrong, I have also done a lot of things right.
Right, exactly. We
Right?
tend to not focus attention on that.
So yeah, you're right. Focus, be positive and be more kind to yourself. I think that is what I would tell my younger self.
Cool, super cool. I think we had amazing stuff, lots to learn from you. Even I personally learned a lot of stuff. I think which will help not only our audience, but I think our whole team. It will help them also a lot of stuff which we are, whatever we are building also, right? Whatever products we are also building, I think there are also a lot of learnings to apply, which I think
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
I would love to have a quick rapid fire round,
Okay.
and let's see how
Okay.
it works out. So, I'll be firing 7 questions to you, and
Okay.
it'll be just like one word answer. which you have
Okay.
to put. Tell me in one word, how would you separate a good manager from an outstanding one?
Empathy.
Oh, okay. Putting yourself in other shoes and trying to understand.
Yes.
Cool. What's a common mistake even every project manager, experienced project managers must have made? Most of the project managers will make.
That I know it all.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
that happens with a lot of people.
right? So we need to be okay with the fact that we don't know everything, and these decisions have been made with what we know today. Of course, tomorrow I know more, so I'll make better decisions.
Correct. And even if we approach everything with a mindset of not I don't know anything, right? That's where you become curious of asking questions and knowing things, right?
Correct.
If you are with a mindset that I know, then your attention will never be there. You will not ask questions. You'll never be curious in that
Exactly.
case.
Exactly.
Makes sense. What's the most valuable lesson that you have learned in your 22 years journey of product development?
I think staying to be humble and investing in relationships with your peers, whether it is your team, because you may change your jobs, but it is these people who stay with you forever, right? So I think I would say investing in relationships and staying humble.
Nice. What is one of the biggest myth about product management that you would want to bust?
Product managers are managers, but anything else. They have nobody reporting into them, so they are not really managers, but they are actually somebody who's trying to do work for everybody else.
Okay. Nice. So, what is the biggest lesson your career has taught you about people?
People, I think they come in all sizes and shapes, and you as a leader should help them to I would say discover their self-worth, because and I think respect is something that is completely non-negotiable to not give, right? So I think as a leader you should put your foot forward to help them discover their own positives.
Make them feel worthy.
Absolutely.
Cool. So last one question. What's the one thing that as a product manager you would want to unlearn?
See, I mean, as I said, right, it is important that as your context changes with the products, right, what worked there may not work here because it's B2B versus B2C or these things. So you should be willing to unlearn, saying that not everything applies everywhere, right? So there could be always new ways of doing things. So I would say it is contextual, but if I have to say that ready to unlearn what worked in the past but may not work here is something.
So you
constantly
will have to be a little bit flexible or elastic
exactly.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I would love to constantly unlearn.
Cool. That's
to learn something new.
That's a very if you try to understand, that's a very deep statement, I think.
Correct.
Makes sense completely.
So that's what they said, right? You can only fill your cup more when you constantly empty your cup.
Yeah, very true.
Otherwise your cup will always be full to the brim. There is nothing to learn.
Correct. Very true. Super cool. I think it was a really amazing conversation. We had a lot of stuff. I mean, great learnings to learn from you. Super cool. Maybe we will discuss one more some other day on what are the current trends that are going on in this industry, how AI is coming into picture and all, how companies who are building AI driven products, right, how their product managers roles are now, maybe what changes are going on, or
Sure.
how it is getting transformed as a person, how you can evolve and all in these fields and all those. I think we can maybe speak on some other day. But speaking to you, I mean, I'm really very humble, and thank you so much. I'm very grateful for you for sparing some time with us and coming from so far, and I mean giving some time for us. So thank you so much from the whole Startup Tales team. I would love to thank you for giving your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was, and some great questions over there, and I'm really amazed, the work that you guys are doing, and happy that I could just add some more value to it.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.